The hum of the bustling cafe in the heart of Lagos barely reached Toby's ears. He stared out the window at the world moving by, oblivious of the turmoil he was experiencing inside. It had been over a month since Amara had left him, but the wound she had inflicted felt fresh every time he thought of her. Amara, his love, his anchor, the woman he had dreamed of building a life with, was now a ghost in his mind. He still remembered the warmth of her smile, the laughter they shared on late nights, and the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about their future together. But that was all in the past now. Amara's family, the Akintoyes, were wealthy and influential, and their disdain for him, a poor boy from a humble background, had always been evident. He had tried to ignore their cold stares, their dismissive comments about his prospects, but deep down, he had always known that Amara's family would never accept him. It was something he'd tried to deny, something he'd convinced himself wouldn't matter. After all, Amara loved him, or so he had thought. That was before her father, Chief Akintoy, had laid down the law. A poor boy can never build a future for my daughter. Amara deserves better. Those words echoed in his mind like a constant drumbeat, an unshakable reminder of everything he was not. Rich, influential, and powerful. And now, in a cafe that was once their favorite hangout, Toby sat across from Amara, trying to hold back tears, trying to hold on to the last shred of their love. "I'm sorry, Toby." Amara's voice broke the silence, her eyes avoiding his. "I never wanted to hurt you, but I've made a decision. I'm marrying someone else. My parents, they've given me an ultimatum. I can't fight them anymore. They're cutting me off if I don't marry the man they've chosen." The words hung in the air like a suffocating cloud. Toby's heart sank, the weight of betrayal crashing down on him. He opened his mouth to say something, but the words caught in his throat. There was nothing he could say that would make her stay. She had made up her mind, and no amount of pleading could change that. Toby had always known deep down that Amara's love was conditional. It wasn't just about their love. It was about status, wealth, and the life she had been promised. Toby wasn't a part of that world. He was just a poor guy who worked odd jobs to make ends meet. In their world, he didn't belong. "I'm sorry," Amara repeated, her voice trembling. "I don't want to lose you, but I have no choice. My family, they'll never accept you." Toby sat there in stunned silence, his mind racing as his world crumbled before him. The girl he loved, the girl who had once told him they would conquer the world together, was leaving him. Not because she didn't love him, but because he didn't have enough to offer in their eyes. He nodded, his heart breaking. "I understand," he whispered, though every part of him screamed that he didn't. Amara stood up, her face etched with sorrow, but her determination was clear. She walked away without looking back, leaving Toby to drown in the silence that followed. As the door swung shut behind her, Toby's world shattered. It wasn't just a love he had lost. It was the validation he had been seeking all his life. His worth had been measured by how much money he had, by what he could offer in material terms. And in that moment, he realized he would never be enough of the world they lived in. The days that followed were dark and heavy. Toby felt like he was walking through life in a fog, everything around him moving but him standing still. His thoughts were consumed by Amara, by the betrayal of her family, by the harsh reality of a world that saw him as nothing more than a product of his circumstances. He had always prided himself on his ability to remain strong, but now he felt weak, small, and insignificant. But amidst the pain, a spark of determination ignited within him. He couldn't let this define him. He had spent years hoping that love and hard work would be enough. But the world had shown him that love was just a fleeting emotion, and hard work was often not enough to rise above the circumstances of birth. "No," Toby whispered to himself one evening, sitting on the edge of his bed, staring out at the city. "I won't be this person anymore. I won't be someone who is defined by rejection. I will make something of myself, not for her, not for anyone, but for me." It was then that he made a choice. He would rise above the rejection. He would work harder, smarter, and build something that no one could take from him. No longer would he be a poor boy trying to prove his worth to the world. He would become the man who defined his own success, his own value. Toby began to pour himself into his work. The pain he felt from losing Amara fueled his determination. He took on any job that came his way. Odd jobs in the neighborhood, late-night cleaning at offices, freelance projects that barely paid anything. But it didn't matter. Every job was a step closer to the life he dreamed of. Late nights became a routine. Toby worked until the early hours of the morning, his eyes bloodshot from exhaustion. But he kept going. He started taking online courses, learning about business, technology, and programming. He didn't have the privilege of a formal education, but he had something more valuable, a relentless drive to succeed. The journey was far from easy. Toby faced setbacks, rejection after rejection, but each time he dusted himself off and kept going. Slowly, he began to see results. He built a small tech startup, focusing on providing affordable solutions for small businesses in underdeveloped communities. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked. His first breakthrough came when a small company noticed his software and reached out for a partnership. It wasn't a large deal, but it was enough to show him that he was on the right path. As his business grew, so did his reputation. People started to take notice, not because of his background, but because of his work ethic and the value he offered. Toby's success wasn't built on luck or connections. It was built on hard work and perseverance. He had built something real, something that could stand on its own. As Toby's business grew, so did his influence. He started to speak at conferences, advocating for economic reform and pushing for policies that would provide opportunities for those who had been left behind by the system. He wasn't just an entrepreneur. He was becoming a voice for the voiceless. But with success came new challenges. Toby began to realize that his rise was coming at a cost. The more successful he became, the more isolated he felt. His friends from the past, the ones who had seen him struggle, began to disappear as he moved higher up the ladder. The people who had once supported him now saw him as too different, too successful to relate to. And then came politics. Toby had always been disinterested in the political world, but the more he saw the inequality and corruption in the system, the more he felt the need to take action. He couldn't just sit by and watch people suffer. He needed to do something that would create lasting change. He ran for office, determined to use his platform to enact real reform. His message of equality, opportunity, and empowerment resonated with the people, especially the poor and the disenfranchised. They saw in Toby a man who had come from nothing and had worked his way up to something. He became a symbol of hope, a symbol of what was possible when hard work and determination were combined with a vision for change. But with the rise of his political career came the return of the past. It had been years since Toby had last seen Amara. He had buried the pain of losing her deep inside. But now, as he stood at the helm of his political campaign, that pain resurfaced. Amara and her family, once the very people who had rejected him, came to him with a request. Her marriage to the man her family had chosen for her had failed. She was trapped in a loveless union, and now she sought his forgiveness. She wanted to be part of his life again, to make up for the mistakes of the past. Amara's plea stirred something in Toby, a mixture of anger, sadness, and confusion. How could she come to him now, after everything? How could she expect him to forgive her when she had chosen security over love, when she had abandoned him because he didn't meet her family standards? But as Toby listened to her, he realized something important. He had spent so much time focusing on success, on building his career, and proving his worth to the world, that he had forgotten the one thing that had driven him in the first place, love. Amara, Toby said, his voice quiet but firm, you can't just come back into my life because of what I've become. That's not how this works. You didn't want me when I had nothing. You didn't choose me when it mattered. Now you want me because I've succeeded. That's not love. That's convenience. The story continues to unfold, but Toby's internal struggle grows as he grapples with forgiveness, the return of people who had once rejected him, and his role as a public figure. His rise to power forces him to confront the very people who once thought him unworthy. The story delves deeper into his emotions, his desire for justice, and his growing understanding of what it means to lead with integrity. Toby's campaign for presidency had reached its peak. His face graced the front pages of newspapers, and his name was on the lips of every citizen. People from all walks of life had begun to see Toby not just as a businessman, but as a symbol of hope. His story was one of perseverance and triumph against all odds. He was the man who had built an empire from nothing, and now he was standing on the precipice of the greatest political office in the land. However, with success came a flood of old memories. The past, once buried deep within the recesses of his heart, had begun to resurface. Amara and her family, the very people who had once shunned him for being poor, were now circling back into his life. Their motives were clear. They wanted to be a part of the man he had become. Amara reached out to Toby one fateful evening. She had heard about his political success, and now that her marriage had fallen apart, she had no place to turn. The life she had once chosen was no longer fulfilling, and she found herself facing the harsh reality of her choices. She had married a man who was everything her parents had wanted, rich, influential, and secure, but none of those things had given her happiness. "I never wanted to hurt you, Toby," Amara said, her voice trembling. "I know I made the wrong choice, and I can't undo the past. But I've seen the man you've become. You were right to leave me, but please, let me make it right. I've never stopped thinking about you." Toby's heart wavered, but only for a moment. The years of pain and rejection had forged a wall around his heart, a barrier that no words could easily penetrate. He had spent so many sleepless nights, nursing the wounds that Amara and her family had inflicted on him. He had worked tirelessly to build his success, to prove that he was more than just the sum of his circumstances. And now, after everything, she expected him to take her back because he had become someone of value. The weight of her plea hung in the air, but Toby's resolve held firm. He had fought too long, worked too hard, and come too far to allow himself to be vulnerable again. He remembered the day she had left him, how she had told him that she couldn't continue the relationship because her family wouldn't accept him. He had been devastated then, but now, he understood the harsh reality of the world they lived in. Amara hadn't chosen him because she loved him deeply. She had chosen him because she believed in the illusion of love, the kind that was based on external validation, on wealth and status. "You can't just come back to me because I've succeeded," Toby said, his voice calm but firm. "You didn't want me when I had nothing. You didn't stand by me when I needed you most. And now, you want to be a part of my life because I have something to offer. That's not love. That's convenience." Amara's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time, Toby saw the rawness of her regret. She wasn't asking for forgiveness just because she wanted him back. She was asking for it because she had come to terms with the fact that her choices had led her to a life of emptiness. But Toby wasn't ready to forgive her just yet. Toby's thoughts swirled in a mixture of bitterness and sorrow. He had once loved her deeply, but that love had been overshadowed by the harsh realities of life. He had learned the hard way that love, in its truest form, was not built on external circumstances. It was built on respect, loyalty, and mutual understanding. And Amara's family had failed to see him for who he truly was. They had rejected him because he was poor, and that rejection had carved a permanent scar in his heart. "I don't know what you want from me, Amara," Toby said, his voice quieter now, the anger ebbing away to be replaced with resignation. "I can't change the past, and neither can you. We can't go back to what we were. But I've built a life for myself, and I won't let anyone use me to fix their mistakes." Amara took a deep breath, her eyes pleading with him one last time. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need to try, Toby. Please." Toby shook his head. "I can't do that. Not now. Maybe not ever. The Toby you knew is gone. I've moved on, and I need to focus on the future. The world has changed for both of us." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Amara standing in the middle of the room, tears staining her cheeks. He didn't look back, but deep inside, a part of him mourned the love he had lost, the love that had been tainted by the very world that had rejected him. Years passed, and Toby's presidency was marked by significant reforms that transformed the nation. He had become a beacon of hope, not just for the poor, but for anyone who had ever been told they weren't enough. His journey was one of pain, but also one of profound growth. As for Amara, she spent the rest of her life regretting the choices she had made. Though she had reached out to Toby several times, he had moved on, not out of bitterness, but out of the understanding that some wounds, no matter how deep, could never be healed. Toby's rise to power had been a journey of self-discovery. He had learned to forgive, to let go of the past, and to embrace the future with open arms. His life, though filled with triumph, was also a constant reminder that true strength came from within, and that no matter how much the world tried to tear him down, he would always rise. The man who had once been rejected for his poverty had become a president not just of a country, but of his own destiny.